taxes are everywhere. Individuals, companies, and even international businesses all deal with tax law. Clients often ask, do I have to file a tax return? Or what is the difference between tax avoidance and tax evasion? In today's lesson, you'll learn the key vocabulary for tax law and you'll practice two grammar structures: must and have to for obligations, and must not for prohibitions. These tools will help you explain tax duties clearly in English. This is part of our full legal English course for lawyers and professionals. For full lessons, live sessions, and expert support, join our legal English community. The link is in the description. By the end of today's lesson, you will use intermediate level vocabulary like taxpayer, tax return, corporate tax, and double taxation. Use must and have to explain legal duties and obligations. Use must not to explain prohibitions like tax evasion. Apply legal phrases such as file a tax return and avoid double taxation in real life examples. Imagine this: a business owner asks a lawyer about tax obligation. The lawyer explains, you must file your tax return every year. This is required by law. You have to pay corporate tax if your company makes a profit. You must not try to hide income or falsify documents. That is tax evasion, and it is illegal. Then the client asks, what if I earn money in two countries? The lawyer replies, in that case, you may face double taxation, but many countries have agreements, treaties, to avoid this problem. This story shows how lawyers explain obligations and prohibitions in tax law step by step: what must be done, what has to be done, and what must not be done. A taxpayer is any person or business that pays taxes. For example, every taxpayer must file a tax return. For example, an individual earning a salary is a taxpayer. A company that makes profits is also a taxpayer. A lawyer can explain, as a taxpayer, you have to keep records of your income. If the tax authority checks, you must show them these documents. This word is basic but central to tax law. Everything starts with the taxpayer. A tax return is the official form you submit to the tax authority. It reports your income, deductions, and how much tax you must pay. For example, the company filed its tax return on time. Imagine a small business owner asks, do I have to send documents each year? The lawyer replies, yes. You must file a tax return by April 15. Filing tax returns is one of the most common obligations for taxpayers. Income tax is the tax you pay on money you earn, whether as an individual or through a business. Employees must pay income tax on their salary. Let's imagine a client asks, do I have to pay income tax on money I earn abroad? The lawyer explains, yes. In this country, worldwide income is taxed. You need to declare all your earnings. Income tax is one of the most common types of tax worldwide. Corporate tax is the tax companies pay on their profits. Corporations have to pay corporate tax each year. Let's imagine a story. A lawyer advises a company, if your business makes a profit, you must pay corporate tax by the deadline. If you don't, the tax authority will impose penalties. This term is essential when working with business clients. Tax avoidance means reducing taxes using legal strategies. For example, applying deductions, credits, or exemptions. For example, the lawyer advised tax avoidance strategies. Let's imagine a company invests in renewable energy because the law gives tax benefits. That is tax avoidance, completely legal. Lawyers often help clients with tax avoidance to reduce costs while staying compliant. Tax evasion is when a taxpayer breaks the law to avoid paying taxes, such as hiding income or falsifying records. For example, the company was fined for tax evasion. Let's look at an example. A lawyer warns a client, you must not hide cash payments. That is tax evasion and can lead to criminal charges. It's important to teach the clients the difference. Tax avoidance is legal, but tax evasion is a crime. The tax authority is the government body responsible for collecting taxes and checking compliance. For example, the tax authority audits companies each year. Let's look at an example. In the US, the tax authority is the IRS. In the UK, it's HMRC. Each country has its own. A lawyer might explain the tax authority has the right to audit your company and impose penalties if you don't follow the rules. Double taxation happens when the same income is taxed in two countries. For example, the treaty helps avoid double taxation. Let's look at a story. A lawyer explains to a client if you earn income in both country A and country B, you might be taxed twice. But there is a tax treaty. It lets you avoid double taxation. This concept is especially important for international business clients. Now, let's look at two very important structures for obligations in tax law: must and have to. Both mean that something is necessary, required, or obligatory. But there's a small difference in how we use them. Must sounds stronger, more formal, and is often connected to law or official rules. For example, companies must pay corporate tax by law. This is a strict legal obligation. Have to also shows obligation, but it feels more practical or everyday. An example: taxpayers have to file their tax return each year. It's still a duty, but the focus is on what people need to do in practice. Let's imagine a situation. A client says, do I really need to submit this form? The lawyer replies, yes, you must file your tax return by April 15. This is a legal deadline. You also have to attach copies of your receipts because the tax authority may ask for proof. Notice how the lawyer uses both must to stress the legal rule, have to explain the practical requirement. This is why both forms are common in tax law. They help lawyers explain what is legally required and what is practically necessary. Now, let's focus on prohibitions. What is not allowed in tax law? For this, we use must not. Must not means prohibition. It is stronger than just saying don't. It shows that something is completely forbidden, often by law. Some examples: businesses must not falsify tax documents. This is illegal. Taxpayers must not hide income, another serious crime known as tax evasion. Let's look at this situation. A client asks, can I reduce my taxes if I don't declare all my cash income? The lawyer replies firmly, no, you must not hide income. That is tax evasion, and it can lead to fines or prison. Here we see why must not is so important. Tax law doesn't just explain what people must do, it also makes clear what people must not do, because the consequences are serious. So remember, must and have to is an obligation. You must do this. Must not is a prohibition. You cannot do this. Together, these structures help lawyers explain tax law clearly and professionally to clients. To file a tax return means to send the official form to the tax authority each year. For example, the company filed its tax return before the deadline. Imagine a client asks, do I really need to submit all these forms? The lawyer explains, yes, you have to file a tax return every year. If you don't, the tax authority may fine you or open an investigation. This phrase is one of the most common in tax law. It's the first duty every taxpayer must respect. To pay corporate tax means that companies give part of their profits to the government. Example, corporations must pay corporate tax annually. Let's imagine a lawyer advises a business client. If your company makes a profit this year, you have to pay corporate tax by March 31st. If you fail, the tax authority can charge interest or impose penalties. This phrase is essential when advising companies about their financial responsibilities. To avoid double taxation means to prevent paying tax twice on the same income, once abroad and once in your home country. An example, the treaty allows companies to avoid double taxation. Let's say a client says to the lawyer, I earn income in both country A and country B. Do I have to pay twice? The lawyer replies, normally yes, but with the tax treaty, you can avoid double taxation. We'll apply for credits or exemptions. This phrase is very common in international business and cross border law. To commit tax evasion means to break the law in order to avoid taxes. For example, the company committed tax evasion by not reporting profits. A client suggests, if I just don't declare this money, no one will know. The lawyer warns that is tax evasion. You must not do that. If the tax authority discovers it, you could face serious fines or prison. This phrase is critical because it shows the fine line between legal planning and criminal behavior. Let's look at some famous phrases connected to tax law. These are useful because you'll hear them in everyday conversation, in newspapers, and sometimes even in court. This is a famous quote. Nothing is certain except death and taxes. Probably the most famous quote about taxes, often linked to Benjamin Franklin. It means that paying taxes is inevitable. Nobody can escape it. Lawyers sometimes use it humorously when reminding clients of their duties. Tax burden. This phrase describes the weight or pressure of paying taxes. For example, the new law increases the tax burden on small businesses. It is often used in politics or business discussions. Tax haven. A tax haven is a country with very low or no taxes, where companies or individuals move money to reduce obligations. For example, the company transferred funds to a tax haven to lower its corporate tax. Loophole in the tax law. A loophole is a small gap or weakness in the law that allows people to avoid paying taxes legally. For example, the corporation used a loophole in the tax law to reduce payments. Tax relief. This means a reduction in the amount of tax owed, often to support families, businesses, or special industries. For example, the government introduced tax relief for renewable energy companies. Tax shelter. A tax shelter is a legal structure or strategy used to protect income from high taxation. An example, the lawyer advised the client to use a retirement fund as a tax shelter. Together, these phrases show not only the legal language of taxation, but also the cultural way people talk about taxes in society. They make your legal English more natural and professional. Let's finish with the full story that brings everything together. A small business owner meets with a lawyer to understand tax obligations. The lawyer explains step by step. As a taxpayer, you must file a tax return every year. This is a legal duty. If your company makes a profit, you have to pay corporate tax. That is the business's main obligation. You must not commit tax evasion, hiding income, or falsifying records is a serious crime. But if you earn money in two countries, don't worry. We can use a treaty to avoid double taxation. The client sighs and says, "It feels like taxes are everywhere." The lawyer smiles and replies, "Yes, nothing is certain except death and taxes." This story shows how vocabulary, grammar, legal phrases, and even cultural expressions work together to make tax law clear in professional English. Let's review today's lesson on tax law. First, we practice vocabulary. Words like taxpayer, tax return, corporate tax authority, tax avoidance, and tax evasion. These terms are essential for talking about tax obligations. Second, we studied grammar, must and have to explain obligations. Companies must pay corporate tax. Taxpayers have to file a tax return. Must not to explain prohibitions. Businesses must not falsify tax documents. Third, we worked with legal phrases. File a tax return. Submit the official tax form. Pay corporate tax to fulfill the company's obligation on profits. Avoid double taxation using treaties to prevent being taxed twice. Commit tax evasion, which are illegal actions to avoid taxes. Fourth, we looked at famous phrases. Nothing is certain except death and taxes. Taxes are inevitable. Tax burden, tax haven, loophole, tax relief, tax shelter, all common expressions. Finally, we told a wrap up story. A lawyer advising a business owner on tax obligations. What must be done, what must not be done, and how treaties help. Now you can explain tax law duties step by step using clear legal English that is professional and accurate. Tax obligations are a key part of legal practice. In our legal English community, you get full access to beginner, intermediate, and advanced lessons, plus live sessions in a private forum with other lawyers and students. Click the link in the description and join us today to keep building your legal English step by step.